Hey y'all, and welcome to The Application, a podcast nestled nicely in the Enrollify podcast network. This is your guide, Corinne Myers, and I am so excited to share my love of higher ed marcoms, student experience, and campus squirrels. My friends at RARA were awesome enough to sponsor all of the insights and ideas I get to share with you over the course of the Applications episodes. So let's get into it. Thank you for joining us on the podcast. This is the final episode of the season, so no pressure, Safy. I'm here with Safy. She's going to introduce herself, and we're going to talk about experiences, which is like the theme of all of these episodes, but indirect experiences, and we'll get into that, what it means in a second. But I will let Safy introduce it. Safy, what do you do? What have you done in higher ed, in marketing, and content? Tell us about yourself.
Hey everyone, so I'm Safy Stevenson. I'm the Associate Director of Integrated Strategy at Simpson Scarborough, and I have been in all types of educational roles, whether it be higher ed. I've done marketing and content for a children's museum, which is kind of like that hands-on early childhood development experiences and whatnot. But I actually started out my career in television news production, so being a producer on the line here in the Raleigh market, and then was wanting to kind of take a shift. I got recruited to do a special project at the station, and I actually really fell in love with doing all the web content planning for the special projects, and was like, ooh, I kind of want to not just talk about death and destruction all day. And I decided to kind of roll into where I'm at now, which is kind of like that PR, marketing, communication, kind of content all rolled up. We know that we wear multiple hats. So yeah, super excited to be here and talk about experiences and the elusive indirect experience.
So Safy and I just finished up a TikTok masterclass. So definitely worth checking out at via Enrollify as well. I think Enrollify is going to get tired of us. Actually, Zach is going to get tired of us. During those hours and hours and then more hours of not only prep for that, but also our tangent conversations that didn't result in anything productive, just us talking, which is productive, honestly.
It's productive.
But it didn't result in anything on a slide. We've talked about kind of indirect experiences. Mm-hmm. And I think we've been thinking about this a lot, because it's we think of student experiences or prospective student experiences through the lens of in-person interactions, what are they doing on the website? How are they doing a campus tour? Are they talking to faculty? Yeah. But this idea of as marketing communication professionals, we're trying to capture those experiences and then show them. And so this idea of indirect experiences, which probably isn't new, but one of my favorite things about being a strategist is putting names to things so we can then create strategy around them. So indirect experiences and what the hell it is. So Safy, you gave a really good example the other day. Tell me what you think, what are indirect experiences?
Yeah, so the example that I gave the other day was talking about comparing my love for caffeine and what kind of caffeine I'm going to have day to day. And one of the things I talked about from an indirect experience was Starbucks, right? If I'm a person at Starbucks, I've never been to Starbucks ever in my life, and Starbucks is trying to create brand affinity with me and get me to come into a store and enjoy a coffee. What happens if every day that I drive by Starbucks and I see the drive-through line wrapped around the building and into the road? I've got 5 minutes to get coffee in the morning on my commute to work. And for me, that's an indirect negative experience. I just don't have my perception of what is going on within that little Starbucks that I'm passing every day. It's whoa. This is too much for me. One, I don't have the time to wait in line. Two, I'm also going to assume that the service is potentially bad or slow. And those are assumptions that I'm making without even having interacted with Starbucks. I'm already not a Starbucks fan. I have never talked to a barista. I've never had a drink. But all because I've had this indirect experience with just seeing the line wrap around the building has already kind of turned me off from the brand. And I haven't even had a direct experience with it yet. So that was one thing that I was considering, especially when we talk about higher ed. What are some of those indirect experiences that we have that sometimes we're not even aware of, that they're indirect and also negative?
Yeah, so through that conversation that we had that no one else was privy to, but Safy and I had, thinking about indirect experiences and the example of Starbucks, which, by the way, you just need mobile order in your life.
I do have mobile order now. I'm a Starbucks fan. This is just an example, okay?
Okay. I just want to make sure that you were not missing out on Starbucks. I'm a pretty big
point
caffeine
system
snob. Yes. See, loyalty. We should have an entire episode about loyalty programs.
Yes.
Anyway, there are like we identified 3 different types of indirect experiences. So like there's like the intentional capturing of firsthand experiences via content to influence others. Like the marketing communications role. Like, right, you're like going and like doing a video of somebody experiencing something firsthand and you're capturing it so others can experience it indirectly. And you're like capturing good moments. There's also this idea of like seeing others having experience and associating that experience with the brand. So I think that's, Safy, that's the example you gave about Starbucks. That's also, if a friend, I think you also mentioned this example we were talking the other day. If a friend says something, they're like talking about an experience they had and they're talking to you about it, that's like another indirect experience. Mm-hmm. Again, this idea of somebody else is experiencing it and you're seeing it or being exposed to it in somehow. Mm-hmm. And then there's this idea of exposure to messages. And so this is really a good example in higher ed is all the news stations, everybody's talking about the cost of higher ed. And so those messages, maybe you're not in an institution, maybe you're a prospective student, but now you're associating, all these exposure that you're getting to the messages that now college is expensive, even if like in your instance it wasn't or isn't.
Yeah.
And there's
it's like that thought leadership influencing what I think about an industry, what I think about a brand, just based on kind of like that high level holistic approach to something versus like an individual experience I've had.
Exactly. Yeah. So those 3 I think came out, and I think my question back to you was like, what's the best way to capture experiences in like what is like how do we what if you think about it, what's the best way to capture firsthand experiences to provide indirect experiences to influence somebody, which is like that first bucket of like if you're a Marcom team, you're going out intentionally capturing firsthand experiences, again, to influence others via indirect experiences. You're putting it into an email, you're putting it into content, you're putting it into social. What's the best way to do that if you think about it through the lens of indirect experiences?
That's the question, isn't it? We would be rich, we would be millionaires if we had the perfect answer and the framework and the tour lined up to talk about it.
I know, right? It's like we talked about 3 layers deep, and I think it was an interesting conversation. So in the TikTok masterclass, the suggestion is when you're creating content, especially for TikTok, you think about a topic and then go 3 layers deep, because it's never niche enough for TikTok. But for indirect experiences, and I actually had this moment of like, aha, when I watched a recent video. I think Purdue produced a brand video, or their agency partner did. It follows the life of an individual from her perspective and her experiences as she goes through the life cycle of getting into, actually she's a kid at first and then she goes through this process.
Yeah.
And this idea of like, when we experience things firsthand, we're experiencing them very narrowly, niche, and focused.
Yep.
So why don't we as communicators also do indirect experiences in the same way? Like, why are we creating brand anthem videos that shows you 40 different things? That's not how you experience real world things.
Is it? And I know, because we talked about this a lot. And one of the things I also think that is a fence or a wall here is the fact that that's what we're tasked to do.
Yeah.
We're asked to, we can make only one video this year, you all, with the budget that we have, and the one camera that we have that the lens is cracked and there's dust in there from 1985. We can only make one video this year, so make it count. And I think sometimes as communicators and as content creators, sometimes we think that make it count, this one thing, make it count, it has to encompass all the things versus doing one singular thing and one singular message really well and really impactfully. So instead of looking at it as like you said, the 3 layers deep, this is singular and focused. It's going to hit the people that it needs to hit and have that impact. We're thinking deep in that perspective versus sometimes when we have those limited resources or even sometimes just that limited vision, we start to think really wide and try to be all things to everyone. And in the midst of doing that, targeting and hitting no one. Mm-hmm. And that's not the impact we were looking for to begin with.
The link between student engagement and student success is clear. The more actively engaged students are, the more likely they are to learn, stick with their studies through to graduation, and attain their academic goals. Most higher ed institutions understand that link now better than ever. And yet in the last year, graduation rates are down 6%, retention is down 15%, and co-curricular engagement is down from 59 to 57%. Students cite struggles finding the right resource at the right time to feel engaged on their own terms, as well as an increasing level of mental health challenges and anxiety as some of the biggest barriers to engagement. That's where RARA comes in. RARA Student Engagement and Success Technology makes it easier for your students to engage with information, services, resources, and tools they need every day than a single app. Whether it's booking time with their advisor, signing up for an event or club, or learning more about financial literacy as a college student, with RARA, there's no more searching around various websites, social media pages, or looking through email inboxes. It's all within the RARA app. Even better, over time, the app will learn what is most relevant to your students and will push those resources first, similar to a Netflix experience. I actually downloaded RARA on my phone myself and got to try it out. Super cool, great curated content, and a great way really to make it a one-stop shop. We all know higher ed websites tend to be monsters. Start making student experience the center of everything you do by visiting raralife.com/application. That's raralife.com/application. Yeah, and so I've said 3 layers deep and you have 2. Just to clarify for anybody who hasn't had the opportunity to hear us nerd out on content, 3 layers deep is like a singular focus on an event or like a location. It's a niche. And then it's also picking a style. So entertaining, inspiring, or educational. So it's if you're going to talk about, and I keep using your mushroom guy example.
I love that guy.
Over several channels now, I think. So mushroom guy is like, maybe that's me. Anyway, so we've got this example of like, there's a faculty member who's like an expert, right? Actually, you should explain it because it's your story and I probably have butchered it across channels now. So like, tell me about it.
Well, no, I've heard you say it across channels, and I was like, that's exactly right. So you're, again, he has branded himself pretty freaking strong to have that. But essentially we had like a client who within their video content, we saw this really entertaining faculty member who is kind of like an expert forager. And he makes these like cool videos where he goes out and forages like mushrooms and different vegetation and tell you this is edible, this is not edible, this helps control the butterfly population. This helps kill the wolf population. And it's like so cool and so fascinating, especially if you're a nature person or if you're into plants, kind of like myself. And essentially, like, this guy is just super cool. And again, we're focusing on him because 1, he's a faculty member at this school. 2, he has a very niche and narrow point of view as far as why, like, his purpose behind making these videos. And he's going to speak to he's not going to resonate with absolutely everyone. I'm sure I could tell this story to some people and they would be like, I don't care about this mushroom freak out here going in the woods, eating random plants off of trees. Like, they're going to think that's weird and not cool. But for someone like me, it really resonates with me. And so just thinking that as we're talking about the 3 layers, 1, he's trying to educate, but also for people like myself is extremely entertaining. So he's almost like catching 2 there. The emotional connection I feel with the videos, I feel super inspired. 1, and I also feel super knowledgeable after watching this. Like, I would be able to pick out a chicken of the woods mushroom if I was if I was out there. And then two, we talk about, or another layer is like the singular focus. He's not talking about conservation. He's not trying to get me to, he's not trying to say, well, you should come to this university because I'll teach you how to do mushrooms. He's just talking about that singular like experience of him being in the woods that day and what he finds on any given day. And it's not to serve a purpose. It's not to push a CTA. It's not to get me to sign up for a visit on campus. It's really just for me to be enthralled with like the information that he can provide that I find useful. And that's kind of where I think what we talk about is so unique to TikTok. And even though I'm having this indirect experience with him via social media, I have that connection with him who is also attached to a brand, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. You know, it's interesting. I've been thinking a lot about zero-click content. I know like, it's like a Google thing, right? It's a Google search thing. You search for it. You know, there's like mixed stats on it. I've seen everything where like 25% to 60% of Google searches don't end in a click. Whatever. We won't talk about that. But that's a zero click. Like the idea started there, I think. But like it's applicable to social. Mm-hmm. And social is a big topic, obviously. And it's not the only thing you do. But like it's a huge channel source. Anyway, the idea of zero click content on social. So like the Washington Post, if you go to the Washington Post Instagram page, for example, they tell stories via carousels and you don't have to click because the story is told well enough through that content. So I'm thinking about this alignment between the mushroom guy, if I was in person with the mushroom guy, I'd be experiencing this, we'd be walking through the woods. Wouldn't be my favorite thing to do, but like we'll hold it.
See, different audiences.
You'll go instead.
Different audiences.
You'll go instead. Yes. I like the woods, maybe not the foraging part. Anyway, if he turned around and said, hey, Corinne, apply now. Like, what? Excuse me, what? Like, that would be the weirdest interaction.
Exactly.
Why do we treat indirect and direct experience so differently? Like, why can't we just do the thing? Like, why do we have to be like, call to action? Like, or no, can I just enjoy the experience?
Or in the inverse, not even just from a CTA perspective, because I'm all about the foraging. I'm all about going in the woods. What happened if I've like, hey, mushroom guy, I am like your biggest fan. Can we please go forage one day together? Because I've had this really great indirect experience with him. He says, yeah, come on, we'll go forage in the woods. And I get there and he's like, we're going through and I'm like, hey, what's this over here? Oh, I don't know. I kind of just take, how you can do like the photo search on Google. I just kind of photo search it, I look it up, and then I kind of just make the video and realizing that he's not who I thought he was. Like, this is not the experience that I thought. Like, he's not as knowledgeable as I thought he was, or this charisma that he has, like, on camera. When I meet him in person, like, he's nothing like this. We've been on this trail for an hour and he said 2 words to me. This is super awkward. Not what I signed up for. And that's like the same thing where it's like, hey, not even just from a CTA being inconsistent or being jarring, but when you get there, the direct experience is not aligned with the indirect experience of like what actually got me here. And one of the things, and you know what's funny, and I need to finish making my graphics for it, but it was, I think that from a indirect experience and from a experiences in general, marketers can learn a lot from the concept of Love is Blind. Are you familiar with that show?
Is that the reality show?
Yes.
I am obviously not that familiar.
You do not watch the show. It's essentially where all these singles get together and they have to propose and get engaged before seeing the person. So the way you choose the person you're going to get engaged to is you're kind of like do all these blind, like literal blind dates. You're in these pods, you talk for hours and hours and hours, and then you switch pods, do that with someone else. And you kind of keep doing that rotation until the end of the experiment. They say, well, who's going to get engaged? Like, who is someone that you're interested in? Who have you fallen in love with by just talking to them through this screen? And obviously what happens, the big drama, it wouldn't be Netflix if it wasn't drama, where people get engaged and you have this really positive, indirect experience with someone that you are enthralled with. Like, you love this person, like at the end of this like engagement and talking phase, they meet in person and it's like, whoa, dude, you were like having to live in the real world, having to move in together, having to have these really hard conversations, seeing body language, like inflection in voice. Are you in the pod? You said you were a super clean and tidy person. I go visit your house and like there's garbage everywhere. Or you said that I'm a chill, low key person and we're on this vacation and you're like high strung the entire time. And it's like that indirect experience I had and fell in love with this person, or I guess even say like someone's personal brand or a brand. But when you get in person and have that experience directly and it doesn't align, it's like, how did we get here? Or are there better ways to have a more aligned indirect experience that aligns with like the direct experience? Because it's one of those things I was thinking about randomly yesterday, because we always talk about, well, with higher ed and stuff, you got to date first. Like, don't just come out of the gate asking me for my email and my phone number and asking me to show up on campus just because I liked an Instagram post and you targeted me based off of that. Like, we have to date and get to know each other first. But like, when you try to expedite that and push that too far along, there's a lot of crucial steps that you miss in the middle, which I think is like the whole purpose of Love is Blind. Like, you try to skip they're trying to skip the steps of like dating. And then at the end, you're like, I'm engaged to someone who I don't even know them and I don't even love them anymore. This is not what I signed up for. This is not what I want.
This was like an amazing full circle example there, Safy. I think, and also it directly ties back to retention. So we have we know of multiple institutions where they hook students for one thing, and their students come, they are there for a year, and then they drop, and retention is suffering. Or like, can you imagine being like a high school student in the South and like going to like North Dakota University and them not setting expectations that it's really freaking cold there like 6 months of the year and there's snow everywhere? Could you imagine? Like, that would not be, again, like a Love is Blind. Like only talk about the amazing things and not set expectations.
Yes. And then also making sure that because it's like it's a two-way street, right? Like, I'm someone who is communicating, like, I want you to be interested in me. So I'm going to tell you all of the great things. But also as like the consumer on the other side, making sure that you have a good compass, like internally, to realize what's BS and what's not, or trying to find other avenues to figure out, how do I get more information about this experience? And I think that's where there are a lot of blind spots in marketing for higher ed, because we're expecting we're trying to give our students this experience via this one or two social media channels, a website, and a print piece. And where are some of those other opportunities for us to create more of those touch points so they can make a really informed decision and have a better idea of what that direct experience is going to be like? And so it's like, hey, we're trying to control the narrative, like through these marketing funnels. But at the end of the day, we want to align with people who are going to enjoy the experience. We want to be true and authentic to ourselves so we attract the right people.
Not everyone is your person. We did
Wait,
some work
what?
recently, for instance. Right? I'm not your foraging person. Or your Love is Blind.
I was getting ready to say. Are you telling me that I can't just walk out into my neighborhood right now and like find my match?
I mean, maybe, but the odds of that. We have to figure out so like setting expectations, to your point of like capturing firsthand experiences to create indirect experiences, and setting expectations and being real enough that it's not jarring when they get here. Because we have a retention crisis, essentially, in higher ed. We are not. For some reason, or whatever, I was just talking to somebody about this. The last 10 years has been focused on marketing communication. We need to focus in the next 10 years. We need to not stop focusing there. But we should also do some focus around retention, because we are not doing a good job of retaining, providing customer service, thinking about current student experience. Because like, you make all these promises and like get the people in the door, and then it's like, oh, just kidding. Like, we actually don't do this. I know you saw a campus tour video with no snow, but there's actually snow on the ground 9 months out of the year. Sorry if you don't like snow. I mean, you should have Googled it probably, but like, you maybe didn't realize how much freaking snow there is.
And right now, like,
so this
like your idea of retention too, like, I feel like there's a layer of, well, higher ed will win somewhere. There will be a winner somewhere in higher ed, right? Because if you lose a student, historically, right, the student's just going to go somewhere else. So it's like there's these kids that are, you know, dropping and going somewhere else. But I think more and more what we've heard, at least from Simpson Scarborough, a lot of our clients are saying that they're not competing sometimes with other schools. They're competing with the fact that students are just choosing not to come to college. And so it's like, as some of these students, as we see that trend continue, it's not a win-win for higher ed. Like, this person's going to leave a college and then go somewhere else. If they don't have a great experience that first time in college, they may not just go to another one. So it's not like you can pick up, quote unquote, someone's, you know, leftovers or whatever it is. Like, that person's just gone. They're going to do something else. And so it's just really interesting to think about that we are trying to recruit, and not retain.
Right. I think there's like a stat, or like it costs like 10 times as much money to get a new person than it is to just retain. And this idea that, like, so we just did a project, right? Actually multiple projects where we do net promoter scores for clients, and we're like talk about like, who are your promoters? This idea of word of mouth. And like, if your current students aren't promoting you, like, I guarantee that is a top reason someone chooses an institution, is because they trust a family friend or like a colleague or whatever, and that person is talking about the institution. They are promoting. They have said, yes, I would recommend this institution to a friend or a family. And if their experiences aren't good, they're not doing that. And the word of mouth engine in higher ed is so important, especially as trust wanes. Questions about ROI and you know, all these things. We have to do current student experience well, because it impacts recruitment, which then impacts experience. Because if you're recruiting the wrong people, if you're showing these experiences, you're showing this amazing thing, they get there and it's not true, and now suddenly they are leaving, but also they're not promoting. Like, this is like bad cycle of like just negativity.
Bad
we
vibes.
Also talked about the reverse.
We were talking about how the financial aid calculator, like from one of our colleagues, Carrie Shook, who's like an enrollment specialist, was talking about, you know, as a component on the website, the financial aid calculator can be like really essential, an essential tool for how students make that decision. And so, like you said, the negative indirect experience is hearing college is expensive, but a potential direct positive experience, if I go on a website and I use that financial calculator that tells me otherwise, I can afford this university. Here is how I afford it. And then being able to switch it from I'm not going to go to college or this college because I can't afford it, with the college having that direct positive experience of having a tool that says, no, you actually can go here. Like, there are options for you to afford to go to college. And then one, having the access to go there. And two, we also even just talked about like just integrated experiences, because now I go to the website, I find this amazing financial aid tool that says I can go, at the end of it is like, here, speak to a financial aid officer, schedule a time to talk to them if you have one-on-one questions. Now, next week, I'm scheduled to have a phone call or go on campus to talk to someone about it. I have a really great connection with this financial aid officer in the university, and I'm already starting off on a really good foot, when initially, when I started this indirect journey, not so great, but was able to turn it around to be a more positive experience.
Yeah, so I also think like the stat is like, of all the buttons on a website, like the tuition calculator is like top. It's like a top, everybody clicks on it. It's a top button. And like this idea of like, we don't do a good job in higher ed of like showing actual cost.
Yes.
Airbnb just overhauled their pricing, how they show pricing because of this. Because people are like, why don't I actually know how much this is going to be until like I'm checking out? And so they overhauled it. It's a good question. Like, why don't we talk about actual prices?
Yes. Or anything. I mean, also I feel like higher ed has this perception of we're so new, we're so unique, and we're so different, and whatever works for other industries is not going to work for us. We are just this unicorn out in space that things are just different for higher ed as an industry. When we know that that is not necessarily true. I mean, like you said, Corinne, like thinking about that experience where like we talk about cost, we're talking about like just overall job market. We're at the age now where people are so sick of applying for jobs that do not list how much your salary is. You get through that entire process. Oh, I really love who my manager is going to be. I really love the office. When you go in to do your interview, or if you're doing it virtually, you think this is going to be a great career opportunity, and you've got 18 years of experience. And it's like, oh, by the way, yes, you have been through 6 rounds of email or 6 rounds of interviews, and the salary is $12. And you're like, what the heck? And you know, like people, they put so much time, like so many resources goes into recruitment.
Yes,
it's literally the same thing for higher ed. So much resource goes into recruitment. Why are we hiding behind all these walls? Like, because at the end of the day, if a student can't afford to go to your school or thinks they can't, they're not going to go.
Right. The Nielsen Norman Group did a study on like the 4 top questions applicants ask or look for answers across like all higher ed. And it's like, if it's not within 3 clicks, like they're dropping, and that is, one of them is cost. Can I afford this? The other ones are like, do I see myself here? Do you have my program? Is it quality? And then like, can I get in? But then number 1 is cost. Like, can I find out how much this is going to cost me in a couple of clicks? The answer is typically no. I'm in higher ed, and I'm very confused often about pricing. And I understand that's like, it depends on like how much you make on your FAFSA package. But honestly, you can't tell me, and I've done this work, so I know it's true. You can say, hey, here are a couple of basic profiles of individual students. Here are ranges of their income. Here's what they typically pay. And then here is a very specific calculator to help you. Like, you can't tell me in the age of like being able to like send a phallic looking rocket to space by a private company that we can't figure out how to do better jobs of estimating costs for students.
Yeah.
Like, this is ridiculous. I mean, we don't have the amount of money that they have, maybe that SpaceX has. But like, we really can't figure out a better system. Why do we hide pricing? It's an expectation setting, right? If I'm going to get my first bill and I'm like, holy shit, I can't afford this, and I'm like leaving, it wasn't worth the money to recruit me.
Yes.
Hey everybody, it's Zach from Enrollify here. So it's that time of year when your favorite brands release the best deals on your favorite products. And for the very first time, Enrollify is joining the party. So between now and the end of the year, you can get 50% off any Enrollify cohort or master course. Want to learn more about how to leverage SEO for student recruitment? We've got a cohort on just that, led by the SEO wizards at DD Agency. Or are you ready to learn more about how schools are leveraging TikTok? Enroll in our self-paced TikTok strategy for higher ed cohort. Or perhaps you are finally ready to join 550 other higher ed marketers in enrolling in Terry Flannery's master course on how to market a university. Use the discount code EOY50, that's EOY as in end of year, 50, for any of our asynchronous cohorts, or EOY as in end of year, for our master course on how to market a university with Terry Flannery between now and 12/31/22 to receive 50% off. You can learn more at enrollify.org. Happy holidays, everybody.
I want to talk briefly about this idea of, so we talked about like capturing firsthand experiences to create indirect experiences, aka content. And we talked about 3 layers deep, like a singular focus, a niche, and maybe make it like either educational, inspirational, entertaining, like again, these 3 layers. And it works really well on social media, all social media, because that's what the consumers are doing, is this curated but niche curation of content. So they're looking for that niche. However, maybe it doesn't work as well for brand videos. So I'm thinking about like institutions who have videos going during football things. That makes me sound very anti-sports. I didn't mean to say
sports.
Sports.
We've got video content during the sports ball games. And
that was bad. So they got it on the sports ball game commercials. They got it on like their homepage. But like, how do you? And I don't have the answer, as I'm saying out loud. How do you capture experiences, but don't lose the niche, singular, and kind of focus, but step back and be able to showcase the university in a holistic way? And the Purdue example is a good example, I think, of like following that individual in her own experiences. But I think there's also this layer of the hero's journey storytelling, which is like this concept that like institutions, well, it's a concept in general, but like applied to higher ed, it's like we need to stop as brands, as universities, colleges, we need to stop acting like the hero and start acting like the guide.
Yes.
So like King Arthur and Merlin, like you are not, dear institution, you are not King Arthur, you're Merlin, you're the guide.
Yep.
And so we got to let the hero, who are the audiences, shine. And I think that is a good way to align content that has to be a little broader. It can't just be a Instagram reel. It can't just be a single email. In a way that helps focus and stay niche, but at the same time provide that broad view. But I think it's like you mentioned this, like they're gonna spend thousands of dollars on these hero videos, these brand anthems, whatever you want to call them. Do we have to do that? Can we produce, instead of one big video, could we do individualized sequential videos? I mean, maybe not on the sports ball stuff.
Yeah.
That could be a combination of them, but like we've got the technology. Can we maybe do hero videos that are a little more specific or niche to like not the person, but like the experience?
Yeah. Well, I think that goes back to what we're trying to, bring up a little bit higher is like the concept of episodic content. Like, right? Like you have a show. We all have this concept of like when we're getting ready to watch a new show, for instance, like I know you use the Stranger Things example. I can use the Love is Blind example. We get to see that, like the snippets. We know that there are 12 episodes in this show. There are 12 episodes that we're going to eventually see. We'll go through all those storytelling pieces and those experiences. But we have that trailer. And I think maybe the trailer is the problem right now. We're being too much to everyone in that trailer versus trying to find some of those more, I think, differentiating experiences that we talk about, the singular and niche. So like that trailer just needs to be 3 layers deep. We're not saying that like, hey, we don't want to talk about all the variety of experiences that we can offer. It's more so rephrasing the content within that trailer to capture all the layers. Because we know that there are going to be multiple episodes. Like when we talk about the episodic content, there's going to be multiple episodes as a part of this show. But the trailer's the problem right now. We're getting so hung up on like these really super generic everything for everybody trailers that we're kind of missing some of those really cool storytelling pieces, if that makes sense.
So wait, hear me out. All right, so that's a amazing example. The trailer is a problem. The trailers are the ones that are being used on sports balls, commercials, and they're being used on the homepage. They're being used as like the featured video on YouTube, right? The trailer. And what we mean by trailer, and maybe this is not what you mean, but what I'm thinking about is it's a trailer for the university. Like essentially like all the experiences you're ever going to have here, we're like putting it into a video. And the trailer is so broad that we're having problems with a differentiation. So stay with me here. In psychology, right? We have expectations. Everybody expects universities to have beakers and lab coats, a clock tower. What if, because in psychology, right, those are expectations. Everybody expects those things to happen. Those are points of parity. They are like, you have to have these to like be considered in the industry, but it's not surprising you have them. So like remove those things. Like don't put that in your trailer. Because that people already expect. It's like if like Hawaii made a trailer and is like, we have beautiful beaches. Like, yeah, okay, duh. Like I know that. Like tell me something new, right? Why convince me? So like don't talk about your clock tower. And this is a little reductive, I realize, but we're on a podcast and I can do what I want. It's my podcast, right? It's a little reductive. But what if you left out like what 5 points of parity? What 5 things can we leave out that everyone assumes we already have because we're just in this industry? Yeah. And can we then shift into like the points of differentiation? What can we talk about that would be niche? Sure. The mushroom guy, if we put him in our trailer, would be niche. But if that mushroom guy represents our values and the type of student we wanted to attract, then there's no problem because that will be like, hey, we're not for everybody. Yeah. If you don't want to go foraging with mushroom guy, you're not our people. And that's okay. Yeah. And maybe we're going to retain more people, right? And it's okay for the hero video to not be all encompassing.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Is that like this crazy concept of quality versus quantity? I don't know if you've heard of that before. It's proprietary thinking of mine. But yeah, like
damn, you should charge for that.
Getting there. And like it's one of those things too where it's funny that you say that because I feel like we talk about like the clock towers and we're trying to be like silly about it, but that really is a thing, right? Like we sit here
it's a serious
we sit here every day and we talk about, and even going on like the campus tours or just tours in general, like we want to show you our fountain. It's like cool, but like what is unique about this particular like fountain? This is an experience. Like I don't know about you, but I did not go to the University of South Carolina because of the fountain and because of the clock tower or because of I know, shocking. And people want to lean so far into that, but those are like, I think, what do you call them, like table stakes? Is that what we call them?
Yeah.
Where it's like people want them and expect them already. And so I'm not going there because you have something that I expect you to have. I want to go there because you have something I didn't know I needed, but I love it.
You got to surprise and delight. That's the only way to attract, right? You got to exceed expectations. Yes. And this idea of like table stakes, like if you, so it's like, I may be using this incorrectly, but I think about like a heuristics. Like people already know things. Use it. Use that information they already know. Universal knowledge of what higher ed is, which is probably clock towers. It's like we don't need to cover that again. It's already been covered. Yeah. In the in the syllabus. Like stop. We're past that. Like can we build off of it instead? I think we just solved the world problems. So. I want to acknowledge that oftentimes marketing communications individuals are like, yeah, absolutely. How about you go tell the president about it because they're not listening? Acknowledge. Yeah. So I understand that this is like, us talking and not having to talk to a president. Although I've had to talk to multiple presidents like this week. Yeah. So just to be fair, I'm not having to convince them to stop using their clock tower, which is probably a much harder ask, honestly. But just send them this recording. Or maybe don't. Maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe not this one. But it's weird because I always feel like it does take that third party sometimes to get that leadership buy. I don't know why that is though. Like, because me and you, we talked about it, right? Like last week, everyone went to AMA, and then over the last since the AMA, somebody was talking about TikTok at AMA. There was some presentation because we have been asked about points of view for TikTok, security, like content development, because our AVP or our CMO came back from AMA and they're all hyped up about TikTok now. It's like, please raise your hand if you were talking to your CMO or your director about TikTok before AMA. Everybody has raised their hand, but it took how much do those tickets cost to attend the AMA per person? How much is that?
No, I don't know.
Plus the flight to probably get across the country to attend AMA, plus the hotel, plus the per diem of food every day. It took the thousands of dollars to attend AMA for a 30-minute session when you had someone already in house, like, trying to get you along. But it took that to get the conversation started, and I hate that for us.
Yeah, I mean we do this outside of higher ed, right? It's like social proof, reading reviews. Even if my mom would to suggest something, I would like, no, I'm gonna go read the reviews because I don't trust her like judgment on things, on certain things. I guess not all.
Because
things.
She's
but,
been sold an indirect experience that she is riding the high on, and I'm like, Mom, I know the reality. Right. I know.
I need some more other points of view on this. Yeah. Yeah. So we should just present an AMA. That's what we should do. We should present this exact podcast and talk about. We'll name it. No to the clock tower. No to the clock tower.
No one gives a beep about your clock tower.
Unless it has something really, really interesting or cool. Like, I don't know what that would be,
yeah.
honestly.
Yeah.
But it's got to be like, I don't even know what I can't even
think of an example of what would differentiate a clock tower from like something else besides whether like it's something really weird.
Listen, if it's like confirm haunted, maybe.
Yeah. If you're not down for spooky, you're not our student. Like, this just
we only recruit Wednesday Addams like students. Please do not apply if you are not Wednesday Addams. I mean,
persona building. We've already done, like, we know it.
Any final thoughts before we stop?
I think just to bring it around, this podcast was about marketers and how we are tasked with creating authentic and unique indirect experiences that align with the real experience that someone will have when they have a direct experience. And go back to, I think, what probably minutes 10 to 21, that's when we talked about it. And then the rest.
Minute 1, and we didn't talk about it since.
So that's what the podcast was supposed to be about. But I think that we've given you some food for thought, if nothing else.
Yeah.
And also, this is my application for Love is Blind. And how I want to, there's so much like marketing psychology that goes on behind that show that I could talk about it all, like just that. But it's just one of those things where like you want to just, I don't know. And Corinne, I think like you start this by asking, well, how do we make that content? And I'm still going to lean into the 3 layers deep being probably one of the most important ways to approach that.
Well, it's like start with table stakes and assume table stakes are good. I know assumptions are bad, but I think we could start with like, hey, table stakes are probably fine. You have a clock tower, table stake. You have a dining hall, table stake. You have small classes, table stake. Everybody's got small classes. You've got, whatever. Like, start there and, like, don't go into that. Like, find something that's, like, different and then go 3 layers deep.
Yep.
And then create a trailer for your sports balls that then bring those 3 layers deep things that are not table stakes. They're actually different and produce that trailer. I think that's the equation. I think that is too long, didn't read version of the hour-long podcast you just listened to. If you had to understand what the hell we just said, that is a too long, didn't read.
Yep.
Boom. Solved. We answered our own question.
All the time. We literally have to. Who else is going to do it?
All right. Thank you for doing this.
Thanks
Safy.
for having me.
That's a wrap for this episode. Please rate and subscribe via your favorite podcast platform. And remember, a better student experience is always the answer.
Hey all, Zach from Enrollify here. I hope you enjoyed this episode of The Application with Corinne Myers. If you like this episode, do us a huge favor and hit that follow and subscribe button below. Furthermore, if you've got just 2 minutes to spare, we would greatly appreciate you leaving a rating and a review of this show on Apple Podcasts. Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, admissions, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks that are all designed to empower you to become a better higher ed professional. But Enrollify is far more than just a podcast network. Enrollify is where higher ed comes to learn new marketing skills, discover new products and services, and find their next job. We're a growing learning community of 4,000 members, and we'd love to welcome you into the fold. You can access our free blog articles, newsletters, e-courses, and more, or purchase our master course on how to market a university with Terry Flannery at enrollify.org. We look forward to meeting you soon and welcoming you into the community. Again, you can subscribe for free at enrollify.org.